Welcome. My name's Ann Bell, and I'm the president of Swim Ontario. And one of the things I'm going to ask everybody to do is to turn off their video. That'll give us a cleaner look when we are recording this session, which we are, and it will be available at a later date. Welcome everybody, and glad to see so many people. We have 69 people already on the call. Dean, can you go to the next slide, please?
Yep.
So and you can tell me, Dean, if I've missed anything here, but aside from muting and turning off your video, we would like you to use the chat marker below to put your questions in as we go through the presentation. We're going to take a brief stop after each presenter for folks to ask questions, and we will refer to the chat. Can also, if there's time at the end of the meeting, let people come on and ask their questions. So those are the two processes we're going to use to engage folks. You can see on the screen the presentation as it as we're going to work through it. And Dean, I think that's your old agenda there. We're going to put Stu in the middle there between Darren's two presentations.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, okay. You're right about that. Yeah, I didn't fix that part.
That's okay. That's okay. I know how it's going. So next slide. Is that everything, Dean, that I need to cover at the beginning?
I think so. So.
Next slide. I'm just giving a little bit of an update here from Swimming Canada. Wanted to let you know that Cheryl Gibson, who has been on the board of Swimming Canada for quite a few years, I believe 5, and who has been the president of Swimming Canada, has now been appointed to the FINA Bureau. And FINA, for those that you might not be familiar, FINA is the International Federation of Swimming that oversees all of our competitions and racings, and also runs the World Championships. And to have somebody, FINA represents all the aquatic sports, so to have somebody from swimming and from Canada is really a big step for us. And so big congratulations to her. Because of that appointment, she can no longer be on the board of Swimming Canada. And Dean Crawford, who is from BC, has been elected to replace Cheryl as president. Cheryl had another year to go in her position on the board, and I think the board will be recruiting a new member to replace her prior to the AGM. The AGM for Swimming Canada is in September. I don't know if I mentioned Dean is from British Columbia, and Dean is also was on the rowing Olympic team, a gold medal team for rowing for Canada, way back. I also wanted to say a few things about the upcoming Olympic trials. Tomorrow, most of you will know, is when we start with the on-site training for 3 days, and then 5 days of racing. And this, the meet is run by Swimming Canada, but hosted by Swim Ontario. And I will tell you, a lot of work has gone into this preparing for the trials, and Dean's little poster at the beginning where it says, start, stop, consult, go back, rethink, all those sorts of things. It has definitely been that kind of a journey. So big thank you to the staff and to all the volunteers, especially the officials who will be there tomorrow. I just want to describe to you what's involved in order to be able to have these trials this year. Every participant, every day must be tested for COVID. And that involves another 25 volunteers who will be working outside of the building and doing the rapid tests, waiting for the results and reporting them back prior to those individuals, officials, coaches, or swimmers entering the pool area. And we would not have been able to have trials if we had not made those arrangements that met the requirements of the public health the Ministry of Health. So congratulations again to Swim Ontario on that as well, in coming up with a satisfactory protocol that they were accepting. And we're certainly looking forward to hearing the results of the trials and congratulating our Olympic team. Swim Ontario annual general meeting, the last thing there, is going to be held on Tuesday, September 28th, 7 p.m. right here on this screen. We did it last year and we will be doing that again this year. And one of the items on the agenda is a presentation on some of the considerations that we're working on in terms of bylaw revisions. So we'll hear about that later. So before I go on to the next agenda item, are there any questions that have come up on chat? No, I get off easy. You'll have a chance to ask me questions later, and we're at 74 people. Very good. Okay, Dean, you can move forward to the next.
All right, on to Darren.
Thank you. Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Dean. I'm going to go through a very quick overview of insurance coverage because I know some of you have heard this, what will now be the third time. First at the original President's Town Hall, then at the insurance webinar that was hosted by Steve Indig of Sport Law Strategy Group, and now this time. So I won't go through all of the details, but we can answer questions at the end. So basically, insurance coverage, who's covered? Basically, everybody who's registered and any volunteer that's also listed. So if you have somebody who's selling tickets for your organization or baking cookies or running hospitality or whatever for a swim meet, as long as they're on a list, they're covered. But anybody who needs to be in the pool, whether that's a coach, a swimmer, or an official, needs to be registered. Directors of the board are also covered. Officers of the board are also covered. Employees of the club and Swim Ontario are also covered, except if that employee is a multi-person contractor. So a person like a service provider, a yoga instructor who has their own business, as an example, they are not covered. What is covered? Any sanctioned activity by Swim Ontario, practice, competition, under 3 conditions: that everybody who participates is registered, it's supervised by a certified coach, and it's approved by Swim Ontario. And that would include also doing approved activities. What else is covered? Things like training camps abroad, competitions in other provinces, and fundraisers and year-end parties, as long as Swim Ontario knows about them. So they don't actually need to be approved, but you probably should be telling us, hey, we're going to have a banquet, kind of thing. Next slide. So everybody's heard a little bit about COVID and Bill 218. Bill 218 was brought in by the provincial government to help in the protection of liability against somebody catching COVID. In order for that to be in effect, public health guidance and any federal, provincial, and municipal laws relating to COVID must be followed. And there has to be a deliberate act of omission on the course of a person in order to constitute negligence. If it's not a deliberate act of omission, then it probably doesn't rise to constitute negligence. And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not giving legal advice. In the act, they talk about a good faith effort, and that includes an honest effort that's reasonable to follow your things like your safety plan, the government protocols and guidelines, and public health decrees. We also have this thing that's called COVID defense coverage. On the off chance that somebody catches COVID and decides to sue the club and Swim Ontario, we have purchased separate insurance that will cover the statement of claim and defending the initial statement of claim to prove that nobody was negligent. Right? When that proof takes place, obviously it has to be settled in a court of law, and no one has ever tested it at this point. So we have no real backup to say, yes, this works, or no, it doesn't work. But initially to defend the statement of claim, to prove that no negligence happened. That's what the COVID defense insurance coverage does. And again, if you want an explanation as to how that works, you should view the insurance webinar. Steve does a much better job of explaining it than I'm doing now. Next slide, please. We also have directors and officers insurance for all the club board of directors and for Swim Ontario board of directors. And so there's a responsibility that goes to those offices, the fiduciary responsibility, and that's to act honestly in good faith with the best interest of the corporation and exercise care, due diligence, and skill that a reasonably prudent person would exercise. Directors and officers liability insurance covers directors, officers, employees, registered volunteers for their exposure in the manner in which they conduct the affairs of the corporation. And the insurance policy will usually cover defense costs and damages caused by wrongful acts, not excluded by the policy. And it covers also administrative errors and omissions. Next slide. What if I get a claim? What if somebody threatens to sue me or actually get a statement of claim, or even if there's an injury, like a relatively serious injury where somebody even mentions the word lawsuit? Well, you should contact Swim Ontario directly. We have the responsibility of talking to the club and then putting that club in touch with the broker who will put you in touch with an insurance adjuster. That insurance adjuster will determine if insurance coverage is applicable. And then in the case where needed, the insurer will appoint a lawyer to defend the club. In the time where you might be threatened with a lawsuit or served with a statement of claim, make sure you keep all records and files and emails and anything else that you think might be important related to that claim. And I see there's,
Darren?
yes.
Yep. The question is, good question, by the way, how are personal choices around vaccines being handled?
That's a great question because it's very hotly debated right now in both the sporting community and the legal community. Swim Ontario has no authority to mandate anybody to get a vaccine. Now, having said that, there may be a government law or a facility rule that changes that. But as of right now, Swim Ontario has no authority to mandate clubs to ensure their members get vaccines or to mandate that anybody gets a vaccine. So personal choice at this point is still personal choice. But, you know, I don't believe anybody's made a formal decision on that one way or the other. So it still is a very hotly debated topic. So stay tuned. And when we get clarity, we will pass that along to the clubs.
Any other questions? All right. Move along to Stu, Grassroots, Project Grassroots.
So good evening, everyone. I apologize, my Wi-Fi is a little bit unstable, but I'll try to jump on. I'm afraid you're probably not missing much in terms of my facial profile, but I'll if it comes together, I'll jump on. So the Project Grassroots, actually one of the bill came out of the last president's meeting. It was a suggestion, and it was part of a process that we were already discussing amongst staff and on a few of our committees. So we sort of took that suggestion away and with hopes to build a bit of a platform for grassroots swimming and how to address the issue that a lot of clubs are dealing with in terms of the loss of younger age swimmers and entry-level swimmers. So the project itself, as I stated, came out of past presentations, meeting with club presidents, coaches, and discussions among staff. It was determined that Swim Ontario would engage the coaching community in an open forum discussion around the re-engagement of our grassroots or fundamental swimmers. So our first steps, we did do an early May grassroots survey, which was not too long after the president's meeting. That survey went out to some key individuals, coaching staff, administrative staff across the province of varying club size, as well as other groups who deal in grassroots programming from other sports, to get a sense of a direction of to move ahead in. Mid to end of May, we did a follow-up discussions on the survey responses. And then in June, we did a coaches only presentation, which was last Tuesday. The priorities of the program, I'm just going to admit that person. There we go. Priorities of the program: to encourage information sharing and a collaborative thinking amongst programs across the province. That was one of the key pieces of information that came out of the survey in terms of what were other clubs doing. So we sort of built on that. And then develop resources for clubs to use as they plan for re-engagement of fundamentals athletes. And that will be something that we'll develop over the course of time. What are the goals? To develop a spirit of open discussion and collaboration, finding points of dialogue that can assist all. What we found was that a lot of the responses had the same general framework regardless of club size. The variables were sort of, and the nuances were framed slightly different, but the overall feeling and overall point of information really was similar across the board. Understanding that there's no right answer to this problem, but there are ways to discuss and define that we can apply to all of the programs. So the hope is that we can provide a platform that every club feels they can pull from. So how we define it, and I'll thank Christy Yaremchuk for helping wordsmith the final version of this. And this is a variation of all of the definitions that we ask the clubs to provide. Grassroots programming engages young and new swimmers at the entry level and introduces them to the foundational fundamentals of competitive swimming. So from the entry level and the building blocks of our sport, okay? We presented, and some of the next few items are some of the things that we presented to the coaches at our meeting last Tuesday. We provided some numbers in terms of framework. Grassroots level membership has fallen by 60 to 100% depending on the program. There were programs that were able to get those levels of athletes and that level of designation of athlete into the water, but it wasn't something that we saw across the board. The reason we can't give you a specific number is because this year, our pre-competitive membership is sitting at about 60% lower than last year. But a lot of that is made up by athletes who have traditionally been registered competitive in the past, who registered as pre-competitive. So the true impact of pre-competitive loss probably won't be seen until the fall, maybe even into the spring of 2022. But what we know is there has been a significant drop. The areas hardest hit included 12 and unders, pre-competitive athletes, learn to swim programming, and those kind of fall into kind of similar categories in terms of the focus of programming. Para swimming has been significantly impacted by this. Master swimming, and then what we call auxiliary programming. And this is, we pulled this out based on some of the programming that was launched or was not able to be run by member clubs. So triathlon groups, life-saving stroke development or camp programming, and that includes summer camps. And that's mostly from last year, because I think we're still unclear about the scope of programming that clubs are going to be able to offer this summer. So some of the stats that we were able to pull from some details from Norm O'Reilly, who works at the University of Guelph. Norm helped out with the stakeholder survey that we circulated in the fall. He was able to provide some research and some statements in and around the impact of the pandemic on athletes. So one of the first statements he made was that research shows that 7 in 10 athletes have seen a massive decline in their physical and mental health. This is aligning similar to what we're seeing in school-age children, and what we're seeing in just sort of everyday kids working their way through life. 7 out of 10 is significant in terms of our numbers, and it is something that will need to be addressed as we move forward. So programming considerations, and what we tried to do is provide sort of blanket statements that, based on the feedback that we received, some of what Norm had passed directed to us. Programming considerations, the idea to engage to help retention, so make it fun, make it dynamic, make it social. Okay, and those 3 elements are elements that will key to the physical and mental health aspect as well. Consider mental health and development of life skills in your plans. Okay, look at the broader picture, service the person, don't just focus on the athlete. Embrace innovation and creativity and be mindful of realistic benchmarks and expectations. What we saw throughout the course of the pandemic was that clubs were really creative in their thinking and innovative in their planning and their programming. And that's kind of what allowed a lot of programs to come to this point, or where they are now. So what we're saying is that needs to carry on, but there also needs to be sort of a mindfulness around some realistic benchmarks and expectations. We're concerned about clubs who are going down a line with programming that is not necessarily that they have expectations before, and they may not meet those expectations, and they may just, again, shift course, right? So set those benchmarks, set timelines, set some expectations, and just watch as the program you roll out develops. One of the phrases we sort of built out of our discussions was, if we build it, will they come? And this was, the answers to this were kind of helped by Norm in the stuff that he provided. He determined that your diehards, those kids that are in, the answer is yes, they'll be there for you. Those who are uncertain, if you give them a reason and engage them properly, they'll be with you. Okay, but there is that risk that they can be drawn to another sport, they can be drawn to another activity, they may not want to connect back into swimming in the fall, say, or at their next opportunity, I should say. And new swimmers, this is the one that really sort of hit me. This is where the challenge lies, and it won't be easy. The competition for that child, for that family, is going to be very high amongst sports. So we really do need to find a way to make our programming offer it out in a way that's going to bring them in and want to stay. Okay. With regards to the next steps, and again, this I've condensed it into 2 slides here of a 20-slide presentation, and we'll have that up on the website shortly. The next steps: continue dialogue with the coaching community. So our feeling is that we'll continue presentations with the coaches as we move forward. encourage collaboration between clubs regionally. So we're trying to create a bit of a gateway and a pipeline of discussion of like-minded clubs, like-minded coaches, and regions who have similar challenges, and build and develop resources for the clubs with this programming in mind. So that's the broader based challenge. That's it for my slides. I'm happy to take any questions. I saw a couple come up in the chat. Let's see, Louise, is that research statement for all sports? I think, Louise, yes, I think it's a general sport statement, not specific to swimmers, but the feeling we got from Norm was that swimming fell in line with this with this statement. Janet, how will Swim Ontario assist in marketing our sport? That was a question that came out of the last president's call as well. This is something that we are talking about in terms of how to best sort of provide, and that's probably one of the resources that we would be looking at. One of the things we do need to understand is how we can align with the NSO, with Swimming Canada on a project like that. So there is discussion about that going on. It's just how best to service, and I think that's probably one of those next step items that we'll try to engage the clubs on in terms of marketing ideas and areas where they would, or platforms that they feel would be a good option for us to consider. And there's one more. What about retention in senior groups who have now discovered life as a teen without swimming? Yeah, this is a challenging one for sure. And I would think that statement about from the uncertain standpoint is applicable across all ages, not just to the grassroots swimmers. It is something that we are looking at. I think that what we know is that there really does, one of the key things that we are trying to stress, and we did stress on the call with the coaches last Tuesday, was they really need to consider those first three statements, the fun, dynamic, social, a part of it. Because I think a lot of that is what kids are going to be looking to. We're in the next, we are at the precipice of a new quadrennial. So we really are trying to encourage clubs to focus on sort of getting everybody involved, bringing everybody back in, not just focusing on the 1 to 2%, top 1 to 2%, focusing on the program as a whole. Really focusing on the capacity and the numbers rather than the training in the first part. But we do recognize that there is a challenge in terms of those kids who have found jobs, look to another, move to focus on another activity, or focused on school. We do see that as a key concern as well. And are there thoughts about making swimming more accessible through scholarships and the like? Are you sorry, Katerina, are you speaking in terms of like university scholarships? Like,
no, I'm thinking age group, but for low income families.
Oh, well, we have had a discussion. It was brought up in it was brought up on one of our committee meetings. So it is an item that we have started to look at, and not so much the scholarships, but the accessibility piece. So I would say we would take that back for now as a discussion point, but it's certainly something that we can consider and look at.
Stu, it's Anne.
I am.
On that topic, I think it's posted, the grant seminar we did One of the things there is that Jumpstart and a few other organizations may be a good source of funding for grants to help bring kids into swimming. And so and they would have to be applied for at the local level, where you would be looking for subsidy for a certain number of swims coming in. So that would be I would really encourage you to look at Jumpstart. And I think in that webinar, we also listed a few other organizations that might have grants for that purpose.
Yeah, and further to that, Anne, Christy's done a great job of compiling a number of grants that have been available to the clubs. And we've done our best to make those available to the clubs from a communication standpoint, but information around those types of things is updated to the website regularly.
Yeah. Okay, we should move on, Stu, just because of the other. Yeah, apparently I was given that job of moving us along, but thank you. Over to Darren.
Thank you, Anne. So we promised at the last President's Town Hall that we would talk a little bit about the Swim Ontario bylaws. As some of you have heard, some of you have participated in our stakeholder meeting that we had in May. Swim Ontario is rewriting its bylaws. They haven't had a major overhaul since 2012. And the board instructed the Policy and Governance Committee to strike a subcommittee to recommend bylaw revisions. So we are in the middle of doing that. The plan to have bylaw revisions in front of the membership at the AGM. So just very quickly, the role of the Swim Ontario bylaws, what they entail. They define Swim Ontario membership. They establish voting rights at the AGM for electing directors, appointing the auditors, and approving bylaw amendments, defines the responsibility of the board of directors and its standing committees, and sets a high-level agenda and the rules for meetings of the members, that's the AGM, and any special meetings that might occur, including those for board elections, and it also sets the rules for meetings of the board. What it does not entail, it does not define operational committees or operations of Swim Ontario, does not define policies and procedures, and it does not define the strategic direction of the organization. There are sets of documents subsequent to the bylaws that define all of those areas. Next slide, please. So why update the bylaws? Why now? There have been significant changes that have occurred in Swim Ontario since the bylaws have last rewritten. And some of those have been driven by legislative and sport governance best practices. So we need to ensure compliance with the new, soon to be given royal assent any day now, Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, also known as ONCA. We need to align with best practices as set out by the Canadian Sport Governance Code from the Canadian Olympic Committee. We need to align with new Swimming Canada policies around registration and identification of certain aspects in registration. And we also need to ensure consistency with the ever-evolving safe sport policies and practices. And safe sport, as you all are aware, has become a very key topic in the last 3 years, and our bylaws need to be adjusted to keep up with that. Swim Ontario since 2012 has seen tremendous growth, and I'm talking about 2012 to 2019, and a strong evolution in our competitive swimming program. So we need to align with our Swim Ontario's vision, mission, values, and aspirations, especially the inclusion of master swimming. And our registration has doubled to look at what those voting rights may look like. Next slide. Our proposed changes are going to happen in 4 major areas, and a whole bunch of minor edits to ensure that our bylaws are new and modern with correct new modern language. So We're going to redefine our member and stakeholder definitions. We're going to slightly change our board composition. There will be a change to the AGM quorum and the agenda. And we're, as I mentioned before, we're going to look at voting formulas and thresholds. Next slide, please. So our member and stakeholder definitions, what's changing? Well, we're going to be adding a better preamble that summarizes Swim Ontario's vision, mission, values, and defines various individual stakeholders, i.e. registrants, like master swimming, like officials. Officials currently aren't recognized in our current bylaws, and master swimmers are not recognized in our current bylaws. So we need to change the preamble to recognize those groups. And I'll clarify around our policies, specifically with safe sport, that extend broadly to individuals. So the idea is we want to make sure that everybody is covered by our safe sport policies and procedures. We're going to maintain the definition of our members as clubs, but expand that to include varsity clubs who wish to operate as full-time, year-round clubs. Maintaining one class of members continues to make sense, given all the Swim Ontario registrants must be affiliated with a club. This also reduces potential new change to ONCA that allows members of an organization to launch an investigation or litigation. So if you have, let's say, 30,000 members, those are 30,000 people that could launch an investigation or litigation against the organization. So right now it's in our best interest to minimize that risk and make sure that all our members are clubs and all of their registrants are registered with, all the registrants are registered with clubs. So consistent with Swim Ontario's vision to be a world leader in swimming excellence, we want to support and support performance and preparation for life. So this ensures representation of all competitive swimmers, including varsity, and consistent with Swimming Canada's newest policies on registration. And varsity swimmers should have the option of registering through their varsity club or the club that is their preference. So currently right now, in the summer, in the spring, varsity swimmers have to make a choice because the varsity registration essentially stops at the 1st of April. If they want to swim post April 1, they need to decide which age group club they're going to be affiliated with. Swimming Canada has basically said that doesn't make sense, and if varsity clubs choose to operate year-round, they should have the right to do that. And if university swimmers choose to be members of that varsity club year-round, they should have the right to do that. So our bylaws will be changed to reflect that change in Swimming Canada policy. We also need to expand the member definition to include the Swim Ontario directors of the board. This enables those board members to draft business-related motions and bring business-related motions to the AGM, which is common practice and consistency with best practice of many other PSOs. So right now, unless our board member is also a voting delegate, they can't bring a motion to recommend the auditor, as an example. That has to come from somebody else, and that's not necessarily good business practice. Next slide, please. So amend the quorum and the agenda, and this will include some feedback that we received from our stakeholder meeting in May. So the quorum amendment is a provision of 40% of the total votes in attendance. So for example, if there are 300 total votes, we'll need to see 120 votes plus at least one member club from any of the four regions. This reduces the risk that we currently face of not being able to proceed with an AGM if clubs from a certain region can't travel for any reason. It also slightly encourages regional participation. In line with best practice and in line with recommendations from our legal team, we're going to lengthen the notice of adding new business to the agenda from 10 to 60 days. This will allow the SWIM Ontario board to approve those motions in consultation with the ANCA legislation. The new legislation will have very specific guidelines as to what kinds of motions can and can't be brought to an AGM. It also provide us more time to consider new business, ensures that the agenda topics are governance related and relevant to the majority of the members. And as I said before, it's consistent with best practice of other PSOs and NSOs. On the recommendation of our legal team, we're removing the current ratification clause from the bylaws. We're removing that because, in the words of our legal team, there's no remedy for the members. So if the members didn't currently ratify the actions of the board, what would happen? Well, there's no clause in our current bylaws if that does happen, so it doesn't make sense to have the ratification clause in there. And the fourth thing, it'll add the right for the board or the chair of the board to invite special guests to the AGM. For example, the auditor, so he can speak to his audit. And let's say any MPPs or guest speakers current to the day. And this is particularly useful if we're having a virtual AGM and not an in-person conference. And there is talk, no decision has been made, but to save on expenses and whatnot going forward is that every second AGM will be virtual and the other AGMs will be in line with the conference. Board composition, changing the board size from 7 to 9. Again, this fits with best practice. It allows us better alignment for director turnover. So our terms are currently 3 years. So 9 fits nicely where you're electing 3 directors every 3 years. It will also improve our committee coverage. Right now, there are several of our board members that are on multiple standing committees and multiple operational committees. So having those 2 extra board members will spread the workload around. And it provides flexibility to ensure that the board has the desired skills and represents the diversity of the stakeholders. Section 2 is a little bit bylaws, but a lot policy. Will be expanding the director nomination and election section to specify that eligible directors as defined by ANCA must not be employees or contractors of SWIM Canada or SWIM Ontario, and they may be elected by the voting delegates at the annual meeting. There's some specific wording in ANCA that needs to go in to that to update the bylaws on that. Candidates shall be nominated according to determination of eligible candidates policy and procedures established by the SWIM Ontario Nominations Committee. Voting delegates can vote for all eligible candidates nominated or from the floor if desired. So nominations from the floor are still a key component in ANCA and will still be a key component of our bylaws going forward. And we will be expanding our section on electronic voting. So the vision here is, even if the AGM is in person along with a conference, there will still be an option for delegates to vote electronically.
Darren, I'm going to ask a question right now that Louise has raised. Just to clarify, when you refer to 40% attendance, is it 40% of members or 40% of votes?
It'll be 40% of the total votes. So as example, and we'll go through that when we get to the voting, but let's say, for example, if all of the way we have it now, we have weighted voting now, and I'm just going to throw a number out here, all of those votes added together might be 300. So in order to have quorum, you would have to have 120 votes of the 300 and representation of 4 of the regions.
Okay, thank you. We'll keep it going.
So when we talk about voting formula and thresholds. And again, this was feedback from the stakeholder meeting. There really is only two philosophies. One philosophy is based on swimmer representation, and another philosophy is based on club representation. So when we talk about swimmer representation, we're talking about X number of swimmers per vote, and I will show you this on the next couple of slides. So if we're looking at that, that works out to somewhere along the lines of our current voting structure right now, it works out to about 1 vote for every 60 swimmers. And club voting delegates or voting privileges are weighted based off of a population of competitive swimmers. The other philosophy is looking at swim clubs as an entity. And that would mean that basically there would be 1 vote per club. So all clubs are treated equally regardless of size. And you can see how the different philosophies line up. And I won't go through those different philosophies. You can certainly read them. But essentially that's the difference. Now the Policy and Governance Committee has a recommendation. And I'm going to look at all of the alternatives that we covered. So the bottom part of the slide, we looked at 1 vote for every 50 swimmers, and what did that look like? 1 vote for every 100 swimmers. What did that look like? 1 vote for every 25 swimmers to a maximum of 250, and then 1 vote for every 100 swimmers after that. We looked at 1 vote per club. And then we looked at various combinations of weighted voting. And we settled on 1 vote for every 50 swimmers to a maximum of 200. So that would be 4 votes. And then 1 vote for every 50 swimmers to a maximum of 250, and 1 vote for every 100 swimmers after that to a maximum of 8 votes. And we actually, when you did the math, there was no real statistical difference, and I have a nice table to show you that. But we really thought that basing votes on swimmer population was the way to go for Swim Ontario. And the rationale around that. So the question is, what if a club doesn't have 50 swimmers? Well, as long as you're a registered affiliated club, you still get 1 vote. So there's no penalty if you don't have 50 swimmers. So it provides most equitable representation. It better matches the distribution of club size, both what we have now and how we expect to grow into the future. And right now, our clubs with 250 swimmers or more are all lumped into one category of having only 4 votes. There are a number of clubs that are larger than that. And we felt that when we looked at how much some of those clubs have grown over the last 10 years, we really felt that our voting threshold needed to reflect that. So next slide, please. So this is the table of all the math that we've gone through. And it's done by club size. If somebody needs more math than this, we have another slide that I could certainly provide you. And if you want to email me, then we can certainly do that. So our status quo is in the center column, and it excludes varsity clubs. So you get 1 vote for every 50 swimmers up to 200 to a maximum of 4 votes. And you can see that, we have 41 clubs that have 1 vote, 70 clubs that have, 48 clubs that have 1 vote, 39 clubs that have 2, 22 clubs that have 3, and so on and so forth. If you look in the sort of far right of each column, you look at the number of swimmers per vote, and it ranges anywhere from 152 swimmers per vote down to 40 swimmers per vote. And we really felt that the current voting scheme, if you will, or allocation just wasn't equitable. So, and we looked at, after doing lots of math and putting lots of stuff on our virtual whiteboard, we came to 1 vote for every 50 swimmers up to 250, plus 1 vote for every 100 swimmers over 250. And we got to, you know, the same number of clubs as we've highlighted, but we looked at the distribution of swimmers per vote, and it's actually become, especially in the clubs between 1 and 300, the distribution became much more equitable. And then we looked at the very largest clubs, and the swimmer distribution became basically cut in half, right? So we looked at that and said the average is a vote for every 41 swimmers, and comparison to our current status quo is a vote for every 48 swimmers. So that's essentially where we landed, and that was that's the rationale. So next slide. I think that might be it.
Yeah. Any further questions? Okay. All right, little commercial break here. This is a little bit on registration. This was gathered up by Heather, who is on the call. And so if there are some questions, they'll be asked for her. But first and foremost, the registration fees will remain the same as they were for this past season. And the RTR will have a new look for September. Swimming Canada is working on making it a much user-friendly with pop-up information to guide registrars, families, including to complete those required documents. So hopefully that's going to work out very well. They've been working on it since last year when things were a little bit rough around the corners or edges. And anyways, you'll have to, pay attention, review the registrar's guide. There's a detailed instruction, screenshots, so on and so forth. Registrants will be required to submit consent forms for the new season. Some Ontario membership information will be sent out to the club's end of July. Just so it's coming. And the RTR, for those that are familiar with the registration process, shuts down the last week of August for their annual maintenance and rollover and so on and so forth for the new season. And then beginning September 1, clubs who have completed the affiliation process, they'll be granted RTR or granted access to the RTR and begin the registration. So we do look forward to be a much user-friendly process that will, we look forward to the load of swimmers that will be registering. Any questions? Because Heather is available if there's any questions, but if not, you can pick up as things start to roll out in July, or call her anytime. I see that there's a question here. Oh, so you have a question, Louise? Is that we? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll ask it instead. It's easy, it's quicker. What registration numbers are being used to calculate club affiliation fees this year? Heather?
It's always the August 31st of the year prior, because we send out the information in July, so it's based on the August 31st stats from the year before. So it'll be the following year that everybody has lower numbers.
Is there any reconsideration of that? Only because it's now that the clubs are going to have more of a financial impact. And I think it's now that we could use the break as opposed to September of 2022.
Well, we did give rebate back in the start of the season. We did give a rebate to the affiliation.
I'd forgotten.
So,
that. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right, thanks, Heather. All right, all of you know about this, right? That swimming is safe in the aquatic and chlorinated venue, and I only bring this up is that we get this all the time and we know it. And swimming has, and the swimming clubs and the coaches and the administration of getting swimmers back in the water have shown to be a safe environment with no transmission, no incident. We continue to see that. We know it's happening around the world. Doesn't speed anything up, as we've stated the same thing. Everything that you guys probably feel, we feel the same thing, and we have passed that up our ministry flagpole, as I sometimes refer to it, and it doesn't. I'm hoping it resonates, but it is what that is. So a bit of our roadmap, and I think the picture sort of says it, and that I think we want to make sure that we have a slow, progressive return with no pauses and interruptions. I think that's for everybody. We don't need that. The vaccination rollout, I think, has gone quite well, and I think we're seeing it in the news that Canada is doing quite well. And I think there's a real appetite for it. Obviously, with our 18 and overs, first shot, hopefully that's happening really well. 12 to 17-year-olds, some of you have kids in that age bracket, you know better than I do, but that's happening. We know that that's probably a process that's taking place for the return to school. The younger ones, that'll be the next step. I think some of the challenges that we're faced with is the gathering numbers, inside and outside, and that will probably have definitely an impact on competitions. We all know, everything is about trying to alleviate the pressures on the health system, and then obviously there will be insurance implications, definitely around travel. We already know there's things that our insurance company will cover and not cover, and so we're learning, each step of the way when that comes along. This was mentioned earlier, and I just referred to it as vaccination certification, and we don't know where that's going to go, as Darren said. We do, you read in the news every day that this travel industry is pushing for some of that. Indirectly, we know that governments are pushing for that, as it's a bit of a carrot to be vaccinated, and then you'll be able to do pretty much everything you could do before. But with that in mind, I would just suggest that once we do get vaccinated, it is to keep yourself safe, hopefully less burden on the whole society, and we'll wait and see where that comes from. But I know that there's discussion at the facility level and so on and so forth. So some questions. Yeah, that's just a slide from World Health Organization. So I should have recognized that. Thanks, Nick. We're faced with now 3 meters. Rationale right now, and again, remember when that slide I had from the World Health Organization, I think it was October of 2020, and now we're into where we are now with the variant of concern. So I think that changes things. What response did ADM Tyler Curry provide after the May 31st meeting? Well, just to be honest on that, we haven't really heard from Tyler since that meeting, and we're supposed to have heard have an FAQ come from him this past or last week, but I talked to our ministry consultant today, and maybe tomorrow, or maybe who knows when. So things are pretty slow coming from that end, and it's unfortunate. I can say, I think I have a note to say that we've asked for a bit more heads up when they're going to announce any changes, so that we can have at least have a bit of a heads up, so that we can prepare and be ready for the that are taking place. But as of right now, we think periodically, it's the updates of as we know it. Those are always posted there, and updates and changes as we learn. And just an example of this past week, we probably had to make some amendments along the way as things were changing. We were led to believe that things were going to be consistent across the province, we learned differently, that municipalities and facilities were doing their own interpretations, and so the staff had to make modifications as we go. That sort of leads me to this slide, really about the return to swimming, and I'll call it to serve better. But understand that, and I know there's an anxiousness, and we want to get faces in the water. We want to get the clubs going, but we do. I know that Stu and Darren worked on this all weekend to try and make things happen for today. So we're going to put in place this 5 business days for approval process. We're going to ask for things to be submitted by 12 noon on the Friday. And then, because not that I'm giving these people weekends off. However, I know they're not taking the weekends off. They're working. If they're not working on the return to swimming, they're working on the things that other duties and requirements they have with the organization. So it's just really a capacity challenge for this. And most has been pretty good. I think what will definitely help is that when you make revisions, they need to be highlighted, all required that are updated. All participants need to be fully registered. This is where it takes time, the back and forth, and a lot of clubs have been quite good at this and really bang on, but some are fall short of that, and we need some help on that. Facility letters must accompany plans, especially if they go beyond the provincial regulation. We need to know that. Hearsay and having a phone conversation or a quick text saying, oh, my facility is going to allow us 32 swimmers in the water. And well, we need to see that. And so again, goes back to having those good relations with your facility and get the letters that will be there, and make sure that their acceptable levels are clearly illustrated or stated in their letters. Dive Start certifications for the pools are very, very important, especially with the outdoor pools that we may not be familiar with, and insurance certificate request prior to the submission. This will make things much easier and probably will get you back in the water in a timely manner. So we're just putting that out. We're going to probably have a communication to align that up a little bit. But we needed to do that just to keep people in place. That's good. Yes, I'll say that staff has gone above and beyond every time there's been a push for return to swimming. So I think I've said this a few times on different either webinars or club meetings and things like that. It's a bit of a moving target, but right now we are in the 3-step process, 3-step provincial program. June to August, we've sort of chunked things out almost every 3 months. We know that probably we won't see much happening in the indoor pool business until the 3rd step. We don't know what that may look like. I can tell you that when we had a discussion with the Assistant Deputy Minister, the new one on May 31st, we asked for 3 things. One was clarity, one was consistency, and one was around capacity, because we saw that the new steps coming in this time around, away from the color system or what we were accustomed to, and I'm not sure if it's the appropriate thing to say, but it's just, we were really put back to the back of the bus on this when swimming was in a pretty good position all the way through during any of the various colors. And so we don't know why. Again, I state the immediate facts that we had no transmission. We've done it very well. Hence why we have such a comprehensive process, hence why we don't rubber stamp things. We take it very seriously to protect not only the organization Swim Ontario, but all of your organizations. So this is why we do what we do. Hopefully that will help in the long run. Moving along September through to December, we're not sure exactly what's going to be asked and what stipulations and restrictions. We don't know. Maybe that'll straight come from the facilities, but we will be retooling our return to swimming plans, or the expectations. I know we have to go through that once we know more. Cross our fingers that it will be less details required. So we see that hopefully things will go well. There's no interruptions. There's no 4th wave. Everything is done well. We can start to see growth, but there's no switch being turned on to go back to where we were in September of 2019. not for a while. And so there still will be stipulations, and hopefully we get through this period through to August well. And then, as things roll out, we should start to see some growth. We start to see some return to more what we'll call normal competitions or viable competitions. They will be different. They will be different in size. Then we make the turn in January to March. Hopefully we start to see the return of some of the provincial properties. We might be able to see in December a version of the OJI meet. Not sure. And then January, March, hopefully we see another lift or another encouraging process. So that by the time we get to April to August, hopefully we see that we are closer to what was in some regards, right? And so hopefully that will go, but we know that there's going to always still be restrictions, and what those are, we don't know. And then hopefully we start to see a real good regrowth, rebirth, rebuild September 22 and on. So that in a nutshell is trying to describe some of that. I'll get through some of the stuff and then I'll take the questions. On the competition thing, Anne talked about the trials, but just to give and most of you are familiar that there's been an HP exemption that was afforded to our Paralympic and Olympic athletes and their coaches and the officials. And we were able to do a time trial that only had 23 swimmers that were under the training bubble of TPASC. The Take 5 test event, that Take 5 was basically from Nicole, because we started in we started in October planning and developing, but January was supposed to be the first one. Well, the way things went, it finally took off on May 26th. And then now the Olympic trial. So things had to, there was a lot of a great deal of planning, rewriting, lots of starts and stops, and getting to where we are today. Not easy, definitely not economical, but had to be done to where I think if you read the other day when the Minister McLeod brought in about the elite amateur sports, and they were going to have strict guidelines. I think we've put those things in place, and that was on our own accord, working with our partners, but from nowhere else. So hopefully that will at least show that things can be done in a safe manner. I do believe that training is different than competition. Training is training, even though we're promoting the idea that there is a social aspect to it, but there's less of it because they're constantly moving. We're in a competition piece that there's a bit more social interaction, which slightly heightens the risk, as we've learned. So we have to be quite mindful of the competition side of things. Open water, we originally had slated on the 10th and 11th of July. With the new steps, we felt we had to push it back, and we feel confident that this can go forward. We were working on the capacity numbers or the gathering numbers of last year. So, and one should not assume anything in a pandemic, but we feel that we can get this off the ground. It's not for a big load of swimmers, but it's action moving forward in our belief. And then another one in August in Welland. So all this is all determined by step 2 and 3, and there'll be some updates and information coming out shortly on our website regarding the open water events. We had really good responses on the open water webinars that we did. Stage 1 club time trials, our stage framework, our competition framework was based on the color system, and it will probably have to be retooled a little bit, but I think where it will be is still starting small just because of the numbers. And it depends right now depending on the faces in the water, how's that going, where your facilities are. It's all outdoors right now. I'm not sure how conducive or compliant your facilities are for racing, the safety mechanisms around that, but you can test them in some certain manner of speaking, and get them engaged. Stage 2 and 3, and I'm referring to our framework that we have in place, and that may change, as I said, but hopefully we start to see things in November, December, not probably at the level or the scale of what's been in the past, but something that's much better than where we've been. Amongst that, in that November, December, we're hopeful that we'll see some in-person and virtual camp deliverables in the programming. And as I said all along, it's determined by the gathering numbers, additional protocols, and viability. You got to remember, you have to really be cognizant that swim meets is not going to be a revenue generator for at least the near future. So I will go back to the questions now. All righty. Let's see. Let's see here.
I think you're good, Dean. I think
I
you're
got
good.
everything. Did I cover all
Yeah,
things?
yeah. I forwarded you a message from someone, and otherwise you've got it.
Okay. Beautiful. All right.
Now you
Thank
have a
you.
couple. Oh yes, it's Christie's. Yeah.
It is Christy. Here we go.
Thank you very much, Anne and Dean. Good evening, everyone. So I am just going to cover off a bit about the plans that we have in place and are continuing to work on with regards to the conference, the AGM, and awards and recognition. And then I will also touch a bit on to address some of the questions around grant writing and fundraising. So with regards to the conference, I hope that we've already posted a general save the date announcement, and I hope that you have all done that. Our conference, AGM, awards and recognition will be all virtual. It will run from Friday, September 24th through to Saturday, October 2nd of 2021. And our theme is Reimagining Ontario Swimming Together, a very opportune theme that revolves around the pillars that all of you have given feedback into with regards to our strategic planning and over the year in 2020 and into 2021 with regards to how we as a swimming community right across Ontario need to recover and reopen and reimagine swimming moving forward. And the pillars are engaging, inspiring, and empowering. As you know, through our strategic plan. So these will be the main theme of the conference is Reimagining Ontario Swimming Together. And then through the pillars or the streams of engaging, inspiring, and empowering, we will be offering many very exciting keynotes, interactive sessions for coaches, administrators, volunteers, officials, and clubs, and of course, parents as well. And we will also be throwing some athletes into the mix. So I hope that you have saved those dates. And I do want to point out, and it has been brought up on a number of the committees, does that mean that 24/7 from Friday, September 24th through to Saturday, October 2nd, 2021 needs to be blocked? No, we are scheduling, or the schedule is being mapped out around afternoon sessions. So in a draft, and this is not set in stone as of yet, but a draft schedule of afternoon sessions around a 1 to 3 o'clock time frame, and early evening sessions, a 6 to 7 p.m. time frame, and then a later evening session around 7 to 8:30 p.m. session. So no, you don't have to block off or commit from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, like traditionally would be at an in-person conference. One of the things that having the conference spread out over a number of days has allowed us the freedom to be able to book in sessions, whether they be pre-recorded or live sessions throughout the day and throughout these sort of time slots that you will be able to plan into your schedule. We don't have the full conference schedule available as of yet, but it will be coming soon. So it will provide all of the registrants a very fulsome opportunity, a week of full insight, influence, and inspiration, as is in the release that we put on the website, where really it's about the swimming community coming together to reimagining the next steps for Ontario swimming. So just a few highlights that I wanted to point out that we have confirmed to date, and there will be more. And I encourage you to check back to the Swim Ontario website, where we will continue to populate and update the website on the conference confirmation on the conference sessions and workshops and who the presenters are, as well as an actual registration link. So some of the highlights are kicking off the conference on Friday, September 24th is going to be an incredible, very inspirational keynote and fireside chat with Dean in conversation with Cliff Barry, who I'm sure most all of you would know is the coach of Olympic gold medalist Victor Davis, as well as Olympic and national team coach and longtime coach, club coach, varsity coach, age group coach, you name it. So that is going to kick off the conference with a theme around leadership and coaching through challenging times. I am looking forward to that keynote and fireside chat. I can't wait to listen in, and also to listen in to the conversation, but also through that keynote, that kickoff keynote, it's meant to highlight and kind of give a window into some of the other workshops and sessions that will be available to everyone throughout the conference week. So another highlight is Saturday, September 25th. From 1 to 2:30 p.m. Another very exciting keynote and moderated panel that we have in place, the future of leadership, with Judy Reege, who some of you may have already had the opportunity to hear from her, either through, she has moderated or facilitated workshops and spoken within clubs, but also with Swimming Canada. She has connected with coaches, and she will be the keynote for this session, but it is also a moderated panel discussion, and it's also sort of a kickoff to a number of other sessions that she will be either directing or moderating or collaborating with throughout the conference. So Saturday, September 25th in the evening, we also have a pretty interesting session with the head coach of Carmel Swim Club, Carmel, Indiana. His name is Chris Plum. He's the CEO and he's the CEO and head coach of the club. He has coached for many years in swimming in the United States. And what is so interesting about Chris is the way that and this is a very interactive session, and I encourage all of the presidents and or other club administrators, along with their head coach and or other coaches within their club, to attend this session together. It's all about developing a culture of leadership in a collaborative way, with a focus on developing the people within your club, but also with connecting within the community. So I'm looking forward to that session. Again, it goes to the theme of reimagining Ontario swimming and how we have to collaborate together. Monday, September 27th, another session led by Judy. building trust and safety within your organization. Of course, it's really important that you mark your calendars and attend the evening session for Tuesday, September 28th, 6 to 9 p.m., which is the Swim Ontario AGM. Wednesday, September 29th, another session with Judy, Emerging Better, which I think is something extremely important that we all have to look at, not only as individuals within the swimming community, but collaboratively how we can emerge better as clubs, as regions, and as a province as a whole within the swimming community in Canada. And then Friday, October 1st is our Swim Ontario Awards and Recognition Celebration, which again is going to be very exciting. Of course, it's virtual, and that session will be a mix of celebration and recognition of Team Ontario Olympic and Paralympic athletes, coaches, and officials, along with nomination, recognition, and Year of Service awards. So we are adapting the awards and recognition celebration based on COVID and the year that we've had, but we want to ensure that we recognize as many individuals as possible. Not necessarily, we're not able to recognize all of the performances because we have not had all of these different in-pool swimming opportunities, but the performances of clubs in the community and what you've done within your own clubs, we want to make sure that we're recognizing them through the awards. So as well, with regards to recognition and support, a couple of things that we have been working on, just highlighting, and this has been touched on already a bit by Darren and Dean, and I think even Stu, COVID relief update. Just with regards to the COVID relief update, there were 63 clubs that applied, 14 small, 20 medium, 29 large clubs. So this was based off of funding that we received from the government. So 150,000 combined with also funding, so funding from the government, and then funding that we have looked at also from Swim Ontario. We want to make sure that we are providing this relief to clubs, so 63 clubs. Recipients will be announced at the beginning of July. Also, we have been working in collaboration with one of our longtime partners and sponsors, Nuthers Awards and Recognition. Each club will receive 20 pins in September. It's a pretty amazing pin. There's a picture of it there. It's silver with the Swim Ontario logo, and engage, inspire, empower, the pillars of our strategic plan. And there will be, and those will be at your discretion to hand out. We will also, if you want to order more of those, we can go through that process with the individual clubs. And I also just want to thank all of you that have participated in the Hometown Heroes. This has been another way to recognize all that clubs have done, and different groups or individuals within clubs throughout COVID. It's been a very popular program. We've recognized every Friday, and we will continue to do so because applications keep coming in. And I just want to thank you for the time that all of you have taken to submit those Hometown Hero recognitions. So I just want to quickly touch on, there were a couple of questions around to give you an update on grant writing and fundraising. So to Anne's point, and Stu and Darren and Dean, I think all touched on, we did the grant writing webinar back a couple of months or weeks ago now. And it is posted on the website. I encourage you, if you didn't have the opportunity to attend, or even if you did have the opportunity to attend, to go back and look at those links. We will continue to ensure that those links are refreshed. And if we hear about any other opportunities, we'll make sure that we update resources there. With regards to the Ontario Trillium Foundation, which seems to be where the ministry is trying to flow money through for amateur sport, community build funding, the capital fund is still not open. There's no information. It just says check back. One update to the community build fund through Ontario Trillium funding is that they have removed the deadline. So it's an open-ended application. So if your club, there was a deadline at one point, but now that has been removed. So if your club might have looked at that or might have thought, okay, so we're not going to meet the deadline, you might want to go back and look at if the operating stream, there might be an opportunity for yourself as a club or for you to collaborate with another organization to apply for the community build funding operating stream. Again, the capital is not yet available. The Resilient Communities Fund, that if you might recall from the webinar, or you might have actually applied, the Ontario Trillium Foundation first made that available in the spring of 2020, and then there was another opening in the fall of 2020, and then in the spring of 2021. They have now put on the Ontario Trillium Foundation an open-ended deadline, open-ended, no deadline. So again, I would encourage you to look onto that Resilient Communities Fund on the Ontario Trillium Foundation. So it's just otf.ca. Look under Resilient Communities Fund, and there may be opportunities for your club to apply. Another one, it was mentioned about marketing. What are ways to market? Of course, we will take that back and see how the different ways that Swim Ontario can help market swimming in general, and different regions or different events within regions. But there's also on the Ontario website a link to what's called the digital mainstream and Ontario Live. And I referenced to this in the grant writing webinar. Digital mainstream, there may be opportunities for your club to apply for funding for marketing just online, or a specific event that you might be having, and or again in collaboration if there was a theme. For example, if you live in a community that has a fall harvest festival or a spring, some sort of an event, and you're going to host an open house or a try it. Of course, once we move into a stage where that's available, that might be open for you to apply to. A couple of other really quick things. Jumpstart was referenced. There's actually a number of different opportunities to apply through Jumpstart. So there's the individual child grants, and you have to understand that a child or a family can apply for successive seasons. So I know there was reference to, well, that's only one, that's only one opportunity for entry into grassroots. But depending, you might be able to explore how a family could apply successive seasons or successive sessions for that individual child grant funding. The other is Jumpstart actually has operational support for not-for-profit organizations and programming support. So I encourage you, clubs, to go and look a little bit further into the Jumpstart. There may be opportunity, and it might not go directly to individual families, but the operational support or programming may be able to help fund, for example, coaches, or pay for pool time or something other that might help offset some of the costs for entry level or grassroots swimmers. And the final thing that I just wanted to tell you about, and I was sharing this with Dean and Darren and Stu earlier. A friend of mine actually, whose kids are lots of kids, 5 kids, all involved in soccer. Tried to get her to get her kids involved in swimming, but they're all soccer supporters. And some of her, she shared with me, and I think some clubs have already signed on to this. There's a site called flipgive.com. So flip, F-L-I-P, give, Give.com. It's an app, it's a program, it's sort of a team funding made easy. I won't go into it right now. I'll try to put some information on the website, but I did follow up. I know the Coaches Association of Ontario is supporting it. I know that a number of, there are a few swim clubs that I saw when I was going through site that have signed on, but it is a way that clubs can not only raise funds, but host specific fundraising drives or around certain events, or look to raise money or support specific programs and or lower the cost of their fees or others. So there's quite a bit of opportunity, and it looks like quite a few sport organizations in Ontario are using it. It's a really cool interactive website. I had a little bit of time to test it out today. And with that, I think I've already gone way over my time.
Yes,
So
Christy.
we'll pass it back to Anne.
Yeah, Christy, there's some, actually some folks have been putting some good information on here about Flip Give. So they've got good things to say about that. Thank you very much. Dean, there was one question back there a little ways from Robert. And the question was, do you see local competitions being possible in the fall?
Well,
That's a real...
well, yeah, I mean, like I've said, we have a competition framework. It will have to be retooled a bit based on the old color scheme. And part of it was to actually slowly bring competitions back, knowing that there's gathering restrictions, knowing other things. We're hopeful that we will get some traction and we'll see things happening. I think we're in a much better position than we were a year ago going into the fall. And it's definitely, we want to see it. We know we have to get it going. There's no huge ways about it. So there you go.
Thank you. So thanks to everybody, Dean and Christy, Darren, Stu, and Heather. So a lot of information there. Remember, folks, this will be on the website. So if somebody you know and work with could benefit from watching the presentation, please do refer them to it. And I hope you all have a good summer, and you can always be in touch. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Anne. Thank you, everybody. Take care.